And is this the future of HBCU sports? Instead of Thursday night games that nobody's watching with no fans in the stands, and it's lit in the nation's capital at night, the bus is cranked up and the refrigerator is full. We're ready to pull out and hit the road. It's the HBCU Sports Nation, and we're kicking off now.
Black out and move. Ride, come on. Black college, stand up. HBCU.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to the HBCU Sports Nation with all the news that's fit to talk about from around the world of HBCU sports and other stuff. You know, I may have seen the future of the experience that is black college football. Forget those Thursday night matchups with nobody in the stands that are not being watched because they're opposite of the NFL. I saw two teams who, frankly, aren't that good in the nation's capital in Morgan and Howard, but what a scene it was. And we'll check that out a little bit later on in the program. But on the field, where it matters, hey, look, it's more than just hype with Jackson State. They crossed the bridge last weekend by rolling into Huntsville, Alabama, and ending the homecoming festivities by halftime. Jackson State put a good old-fashioned beat down on Alabama A&M, and that's where we kick off the Highlight Zone.
Black out and move. Ride, come on. Black college, stand up. HBCU.
In the SWAC's biggest game last weekend, Jackson State dominated Alabama A&M on homecoming in the Rocket City. Senior James Houston, who entered the game leading the FCS with 6.5 sacks, came through early with a strip sack and rumbles 67 yards down the Bulldog sidelines for a touchdown. And the route was on from there. It was JSU's first defensive touchdown of the season. It was one of 10 sacks, which is a program record, and Alabama A&M was held to only 8 rushing yards for the game. And they turned the party into a nightmare for A&M quarterback Akil Glass, 26 of 40, 293 yards, 2 TDs, and no picks. Great numbers, but it still wasn't enough. However, this game belonged to Jackson State quarterback SHEDEUR Sanders. Optimus Prime distributed the ball to 6 different receivers and finished 17 of 24 for 249 yards and 4 touchdowns. He ended the first quarter with a 6-yard touchdown pass to senior Josh Lanier, and the Tigers led 20-0. The young Sanders then connected with freshman Trevante Rucker for a 37-yard touchdown pass. Then he hit senior Warren Newman with a 12-yard pitch and catch, and the Tigers led 33-7 at the half, and there was no coming back. Jackson State remains undefeated in the SWAC and on top in the East by embarrassing Alabama A&M, putting up a 60-burger and blowing them out on homecoming by the count of 61-15. Down on the reservation, Alcorn State and Grambling staged another classic on homecoming as the G-men braved the Spinks Jinx. The Braves jumped out early, driving 75 yards in just 4 plays after taking the opening kickoff. Felix Harper hits LaCharles Pringle in stride for a 45-yard touchdown strike, giving Alcorn the early lead. Later in the first, Harper gets loose on a 14-yard run. That puts Alcorn up 14-3. Grambling starts the comeback. Noah Bodden connects with Daryl Clark for 20 yards and a house call. Here come the Tigers. Then Alden White has to come off the bench to rally the troops. This time, a 20-yard strike to Greg White, and that closes the gap to 24-20 in the final stanza, but Grambling couldn't get any closer. Alcorn holds on for the win, and don't look now. They are atop the West after keeping hope alive. Now tied with Prairie View after their 24-20 dub. The Red River Shootout wasn't the only high-octane matchup in Big D, as Southern and Texas Southern met for the first time in the new Arlington Football Showdown from the Metroplex. And this was a heavyweight fight for 4 quarters. Better than Wilder and Fury, probably. Southern gets off to a fast start when Kobe Dillon scores from 2 yards out, capping a 12-play, 75-yard drive. Let's go to the third quarter, where TSU's LADARIUS Owens caps a 7-play, 80-yard drive with a 2-yard run of its own. So the Tigers lead 21-10. Back in control, right? Not so fast. Next possession, Southern's Marquise McLean feels like busting loose, and he does. 65 yards, it's a house call, making the score 21-17. Later in the third, it's Devon Ben taking it in from 4 yards out, and Southern grabs a 24-21 advantage. They seem to be ready to put this one on ice, but Glendon McDaniel ain't having that. He caps off an 82-yard drive with a 2-yard run to give the Jaguars a 3-point lead at 31-28, and Texas Southern is done, though not really. Ja'Cory Howard from 4 yards out with 38 seconds left to go in the game. Texas Southern steals a victory from the jaws of defeat, beating the Southern Jaguars for the first time in 11 years by the count of 35-31 in what is a monumental victory in the rebuild for TSU. That's your Highlight Zone.
1, 2, 3, hit it. Black Island Boom. Ride, come on. Black College, stand up. HBCU.
Now let's check out what went down in Division II amongst the HBCUs, and we'll start in the CIAA, where number 12 ranked, that would be nationally, Bowie State knocked off previously unbeaten Chowan 14-3 to take control of the CIAA's North Division. In a game that was a defensive slugfest, the Bulldogs defense dominated throughout, holding the Hawks, who came into the game as the top scoring offense in Division II, to just 167 yards of total O and only 3 points. BSU's defense also scored a touchdown for the 4th time this season thanks to a 33-yard fumble return by Nigel Johnson. Winston-Salem State outlanded Johnson C. Smith 26-12 for a victory on the road. Quarterback Cameron Lewis threw a pair of first-half touchdown passes that included a 30-yarder to Antoine Collins, who had a game-high 126 yards on 7 catches. Virginia Union bounced back from last week's loss with a 32-0 victory over Lincoln, who remains winless and failed to produce any points for the 3rd time this year. Virginia Union quarterback Khalid Morris threw for a game-high 143 yards, including an 18-yard first-half touchdown to James Jackson, while backup Amond Caldwell came off the bench and tossed a pair of late-game touchdowns to Charles Hall from 28 and 34 yards out. Livingstone gets their first win of the season with a 21-7 victory over St. Aug on homecoming in Salisbury, North Carolina. The Blue Bears opened the game with 21 unanswered points in the first quarter. Tutson led the Blue Bears with 76 yards rushing and 34 receiving. Virginia State picked up their second straight win as they defeated Elizabeth City State at home 35-7. The Trojans took control in the second half with 28 unanswered points. That was bookended by a pair of touchdown passes by Jordan Davis to Demetrius Strickland and Andre Jackson in the fourth. Davis completed 11 of 15 passes for 175 yards, and running back Darius Hagans ran for 119 yards on 14 carries with 2 touchdowns. To the SIAC, where Fort Valley State rode 4 first-half touchdowns on its way to knocking off Central State 35-14 in their first appearance inside the newly renovated Wildcat Stadium. Wildcat offense showcasing a balanced attack with 455 yards of total offense, 277 through the air, and another 178 on the ground. Clark Atlanta's Elijah Odom threw 2 touchdown passes, and the Panthers defense held Allen to less than half of their usual scoring output as CAU defeats Allen 21-12 at Panther Stadium. Amarian Coleman scored on a 1-yard touchdown run to lift Benedict to a 24-21 victory over the 2-time defending SIAC champion Miles Golden Bears. Freshman quarterback Xavier Foster made his college debut, completing 13 of 27 passes for 157 yards and 1 touchdown. He also had an interception in the contest. He also had a team-high 90 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. Benedict beat Miles for the first time since 2010, snapping a 5-game losing streak to the Golden Bears. Morehouse capitalized on turnovers to upset Tuskegee 35-15 at Legion Field in the 85th annual Tuskegee-Morehouse Classic. Morehouse picking up their first win of the season while holding Tuskegee to just 65 total yards. Ernest Davis led all players with 106 yards rushing on 30 attempts and 2 touchdowns. Quarterback Michael Sims passes for 138 yards and a touchdown in his own right. Sims also recorded a score on the ground when he ran for a 4-yard touchdown to give the Maroon Tigers the lead in the first quarter. That's your Division II HBCU scoreboard.
1, 2, 3, hit it! Black out the room. Ride, come on! Black College, stand up! HBCU!
I'm looking at the turnout tonight. I think I'm making sense. What about you?
I think you got a strong case. I think more folks are going to come out on Friday night. I think we can build toward it, right? You can really market it a certain way. So I'm excited to see the turnout tonight that we got at Howard. I'm also excited to see the Morgan turnout as well. So I agree. I think Friday nights are a great way to showcase HBCU football.
All right, great. So we're on the same accord. So you've been in the room where you had to navigate a lot through the whole politics of intercollegiate athletics, if you will. How do we sell people on this notion? How do you? Who are the power brokers that can make this happen?
Well, it's really TV. TV dictates these time slots and when we get an opportunity to play. So I think as we continue to work with the TV partners, ESPN, they understand that the product is good and folks want to watch it. I think we'll continue to get more of these opportunities.
And speaking of those opportunities, what about the MEAC's visibility now that they're you got 5 teams that are playing football? That's an uneven number. How does that? They're 6 full-fledged moving forward beyond this season.
Well, I think the key is to retain everyone we do have, right? Before we can worry about adding, we got to take care of home. And if we can keep what we have and then try to add and try to add to it, then I think the league will be in a strong position. So, we're going to get a new commissioner with Dr. Thomas retiring, and I think that's going to be a big part of their charge coming in.
Yeah, it's on the cusp of going new school and holding on to the tradition. So, as you've seen it, how much stronger is the conference right now since guys like you and Kerry Davis here at Howard came in?
Well, I'd like to think we continue to get stronger as we continue to add new blood from outside the MEAC. Folks come in with new ideas, new networks, and I think we've been able to leverage those relationships to help try to build the MEAC. So I think we'll continue to grow that way.
Are you shocked that there's been this That's great stuff right there. You still got good footwork.
I got a 2-year-old at home.
Oh, I hear you. But going back to like the football brand right now, football is the moneymaker. So it's you got to have football successful to fund everything. Long travel trips, Title IX, the whole bit. How do we help grow the MEAC brand as far as the football is concerned? Because you got an 800-pound gorilla that's like your big brother who's just like got such the massive personality right now.
Well, I would tell you that actually it's the only thing I disagree with that you said thus far is that football is actually not really a moneymaker at this level. Football, most schools at the FCS level lose money on football. You make more money on basketball because it's a smaller investment with a higher return. So I think football is really about the experience and what it does for the whole campus community. And I think if we keep focusing on that, then black college football will continue to be at the forefront of where you see it right now.
And at this level, how will name, image, and likeness and all the innovations or liberalization of the rules, if you will, going to affect this level?
I think it's going to affect it the same way you're seeing at every level. I think our student athletes have tremendous brands and have wonderful opportunities to be able to, to market themselves. And so we have some at Morgan, and I'm looking forward to other student athletes, across HBCU landscape and FCS having those same opportunities. I think you'll see it grow.
Thanks a lot. Hey, look, when do we get a chance to host Friday night at Morgan, man? We got better building. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'll say that, you can't.
Here's what I'll say. We got Dell State coming up on a Thursday night in a few weeks. So we're focused on tonight. Let's take care of business down here in D.C., and then we'll worry about next week.
Thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you, bro. Good luck. All right.
At 1 p.m.
1, 2, 3, hit it! Black College move. Ride, come on! Black College, stand up! HBCU!
So these days with the millennials, really more about the experience than it is about the game. And that truly was an experience, though it wasn't much of a game. Anyway, upon further review, that's where we're going to take it this week. You can't let television dictate how your product is exposed, which is, I think, what the issue is surrounding intercollegiate athletics these days. And it is a place where HBCUs have to become innovative. The time has come to take that tired notion of Thursday night football played opposite the National Football League and bury, in many respects, the way the four-letter network buries women's college basketball during the course of its season as well. I mean, you think about it. You could have a UConn women's basketball game taking on the University of South Carolina, arguably the best two programs in that sport, played on Sunday in December in a 1 o'clock East Coast time zone, and despite the quality of the matchup, nobody watches. Why? Because the 800-pound gorilla in the room as far as sports TV viewers are concerned is the NFL. It drives things. So if you're going to put HBCU football on opposite the NFL, you're doing it a disservice. And you're making it look bad. Nobody's watching the games. Nobody's at the games because, quite frankly, Thursday has changed from where it was during the 1980s when you could only get games on BET and ESPN. Now with this on-demand things, you can play the games when you want to, which means in places like Baltimore and D.C., Morgan and Howard should never play on a Saturday afternoon in November ever again. Each and every season, those two schools, among others, particularly those HBCUs who have football programs in major markets, should create their own version of Friday Night Lights, an experience that's more about on campus than it is about television. I mean, think about it. You give kids an insulated environment that keeps them safe and on campus. If you're an incoming student or a sophomore who doesn't have transportation, always looking for something to do on campus, it's one night out of the year where you know you can go get yourself a ticket to the football game, stay close to your dorm, and have a great time. You create a little camaraderie, a rivalry, and the whole bit. I know in places like D.C., perhaps Houston and Atlanta, you'd also have enterprising nightlife promoters who would build ancillary events around the carnival-like atmosphere. And to you athletic directors who are in bed with the four-letter network, please be advised, here's what you could do to make it work. Look at it as a second homecoming stream. That game where people will buy tickets and you'll add a little bit more money to the coffers. You know, in these times of economic problems and we're looking for new revenue streams, a Friday night matchup where you get paying customers, perhaps as many as you would get on homecoming for a second time, seems to be a financial recipe whose time has come. By simply making a scheduling decision, move games from Thursday night and play at least one of them for national television on a Friday. And oh yeah, by the way, treat the halftime show like you would treat the Super Bowl show. We don't need any Texas San Antonio Stephen F. Austin highlights when you got Southern playing on a Thursday night or a Friday night even better, and you get to watch the dancing dolls at halftime. That's going to do it for this edition of the HBCU Sports Nation. Thanks for hanging out with us. As always, we've got a full fridge and a full tank, and much like Motel 6, we've got the light on for you. I'm Mark Gray, and I look forward to seeing you at the HBCU Sports Nation.